What's up, wrestling fans? It is time for another edition of The Voice of Wrestling, a special WrestleMania edition of The Voice of Wrestling. And, of course, I'm your host alongside Nick Paglino, senior editor of ProWrestling.com. Now you can see us on voiceofwrestling.net, and we're very excited. Our channel is up and live over at Fight TV. That's Fight, F-I-T-E, and you can go check us out over there as well. And also, make sure you download the app on any Play Store, Apple phone, Samsung, doesn't matter. Just search for FITE and download the app and check us out on there. I believe, Nick, just so I know and everybody is aware, I believe we have that where we will be going live or going up on Fight TV on Wednesdays, correct?
Absolutely. Every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, a new episode of The Voice of Wrestling will be up on Fight. And if you go over to fight.tv, or if you download the app, you can actually follow our channel. You can subscribe to our channel, so you will receive notifications anytime a new episode is available to watch.
So we're excited about that, and of course we're excited that WrestleMania is this Sunday, and we've got a lot to run down, a huge WrestleMania edition. Before we get started, though, talking and breaking down the super event, the Super Bowl of pro wrestling, Nick, I wanted to kick off this week's show with I have a small issue, and I thought you might be able to. You're the guy that can help me. You and I are both sports fans. I'm a Dallas sports fan, so if it's the Cowboys, the Dallas Mavericks, the Texas Rangers.
This is going to be some kind of a Dallas. At first, I was worried that this was going to be like something about Jinder Mahal that I was going to have to sit down and address with you in some therapeutic way.
No.
But it's even worse than that. It has to do with Dallas sports. All right, let me hear it.
Well, here's the only issue is, normally out of that trifecta of the Mavs, the Rangers, the Cowboys, I have something to look forward to every year. The Cowboys are either really decent, the Rangers are competing in the playoffs, the Mavs, win a good 10, 12 seasons competing for the playoffs, and of course they won in 2011. Right. I mean, Dallas, Texas in general, where I was born, were just better than most people. But this year we've really had a hard time. The Cowboys didn't make the playoffs. The Mavericks are tanking. And now I look at the beginning of the baseball season, and we are 1-4 as the Rangers, really not having a good start to our season. And so, Nick, being a huge Detroit fan, and they suck in everything for the most part, I thought you could give me a few pointers as to how to cope with year-long industry, just overall over the entire sports channels, no matter what it is, you're just up for disappointment. And I really felt like you would be the guy just to, help me understand how to get through this, because we're not used to it here as Dallas sports fans.
Right. Well, it's really tough. And I'll tell you, after 38 years of having to deal with it myself as a Detroit sports fan, what I've done is I actually went the distance of marrying a Philadelphia fan.
Oh.
So my wife is a Philadelphia fan. You got Villanova, who beat my Michigan Wolverines last night.
Right.
Can't catch a break in Michigan. So she's a Nova fan. She's an Eagles fan. Two huge champions. I get the rub off of that. So literally you have to just go out and you have to find someone that is like from New York or Philadelphia or some kind of winning city, and just marry that person or move in with them or just like sleep on their couch and let them know you're going to be their roommate for the next forever.
So if there are any sports fans not from Texas and in winning cities, please let me know, hit me up, email me. Leave a message and let's talk. Look, we're excited. The Voice of Wrestling going to try some new things out as we go forward, some new formatting for the show, and we're going to kick it off. We actually have another guest this week. If you didn't check out Robbie E's interview from last week, it's online at voiceofwrestling.net. Please go check that out. But we have another guest, and he's going to actually open our show every week. Nick and I are going to kind of kick off the show with the main event. It's going to be the top talking point, the main talking point that we believe is kind of the big relevant story of the week. And we're going to get right into that as we jump into the main event. And we are actually joined by a fantastic guest that I'm looking forward to talk to. So, Nick, why don't you introduce this guy for us? I'm excited, and we'll jump right into our main event story of the week.
Yeah, tonight, guys, on the show, we are welcoming Brad Gilmore. He, of course, is the co-host of the Heated Conversations show with five-time, did I say that as many times as I need to, Booker T. He is Brad Gilmore. He also is the announcer for the Reality of Wrestling, which can also be found on Fight. Brad, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, guys? Chris, Nick, thanks for having me. You know what? Let's address this right off top because my man Chris said he's a Dallas sports fan. I'm, of course, from the great city, the greatest city in the greatest state. I'm from Houston, Texas.
There you go.
And let me tell you something there, Chris. We have this team. You might have heard of them. They're called the Houston Astros. They kind of won the World Series last year. Rockets are going to finish. The Houston Rockets are going to finish number one in all of the NBA, and I'm hoping they win the championship.
Right.
And, we do have Deshaun Watson, who I think is a lot better than Dak Prescott. So we're actually kind of beating Dallas in multiple ways this time around. So why don't you just migrate down a little further south, down 45, come to Houston, and you can be a part of the championship experience once again.
That's tempting.
Hey, listen, at least the Detroit Tigers still have the best pitcher in baseball. Justin, wait a minute.
Nick.
Now,
something happened last year, right at the deadline. A minute.
This is what when you're a Detroit fan, you block out years of time.
Yeah.
So I still haven't caught up to, I'm still 4 years in the past with that team.
You're like Rodman's on the Bulls. What?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? I think, Houston and Texas just opened up the Major League Baseball season. Of course, we went 1-3 against you guys. I knew there was a reason I didn't like you, and the other reason is because, there's really only room for one guy with slick back hair on the Voice of Wrestling, and I think you might be pulling it off a little bit better than me, and so we're off to a bad start. But guys, as you can tell by the imagery on the screen, John Cena versus the Undertaker. Do fans care? We're going to talk a lot about that today, and of course a couple other topics surrounding the Undertaker John Cena matchup. Now, bear in mind as we kick off this conversation, we are taping this prior to SmackDown on Tuesday, and so if something, we're going to try to keep this fairly broad though, so it's still relevant regardless of what happens on tonight's show. But in case something does transpire by chance on SmackDown tonight, some of this might be a little outdated. But let's go ahead and go around the horn now. And Brad, as our guest, we'll kick it off to you and start it with you. We haven't seen The Undertaker. They've taken a unique approach to this, and I'm not sure if this was kind of spur of the moment, if they really wanted to wait to see how The Undertaker was going to do and if he was physically capable to wrestle. I think most people expected an Undertaker match. But first and foremost, as kind of our main event title suggests, just overall the build going into WrestleMania, do the fans, and then of course do you, Brad, do you care at this point as much as we should about a John Cena Undertaker WrestleMania main event match?
Yeah, I care, and I'll tell you why. Because one, it's a match that we've always wanted to see, obviously, as wrestling fans at the grandest stage, WrestleMania. But two, I care because right now I'm just interested in what's going to happen. I really don't know. I think that we're going to see it. Obviously, WWE is not going to promote something this much, give so much television time and promo time to John Cena if he's just going to show up and there's going to be no dead man. I do think it's been an interesting build, but if John Cena goes out there on Sunday, WrestleMania 34, and he's standing in the ring, and the gong hits and the lights go out, the fans are going to be invested. And they can say that they don't care at this point, but come WrestleMania Sunday, you're going to be invested because it's The Undertaker versus John Cena. It's two of the greats of all time, especially in these last 15, 20 years, are going to get it on the biggest stage of them all. So I'm definitely interested, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
And Nick, I mean, what do you think? I think the build thus far, obviously, whether it's the dead man actually being there on Sunday, whether it's the American Badass that they've been talking about, and would make a lot of sense. Kid Rock obviously being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And then, of course, we've got just the fact that he did leave the jacket and the hat and everything in the ring the last time around. I think there's a lot of understanding that kind of goes behind. A lot of fans would understand that part, but the lack of The Undertaker as we head in at this point into WrestleMania, we're now five days away, but regardless, the week of, and we have not seen anything, the build is a little bit less, obviously. The storytelling has been less, obviously, than we've had in years past, simply due to the absence of one of the competitors. So obviously, assuming the match takes place, Nick, do you think the fans still care as much as they would at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think one of the key things you just said is the storyline development has been a little bit less than usual. Let's remember, The Undertaker is a guy who typically, heading into WrestleMania is not the guy that's selling his feud heading into the pay-per-view. It's usually always his opponent. The Undertaker is saved for maybe that last 2-3 episodes of Raw. And even then, it's typically an appearance. He comes down. He might say one word. He might point to the WrestleMania sign. Sometimes they just use a lighting or a sound effect to indicate that he's there. He doesn't really do much by the way of selling a program. That's usually on the shoulders of his opponent. This time around, it is absolutely on the shoulders of his opponent, because here we are just days away from WrestleMania, and they still haven't even confirmed that the match is going to take place. So I don't think the fans are too unused to seeing a scarce Undertaker around WrestleMania time. But I think what they aren't used to at all is this idea that one of your marquee matchups hasn't been announced. But I think, just like, Brad said, I think that's part of the massive intrigue of this match heading into Sunday night. I think if you look at it, you kind of have two dream matches on this card. You have the pro wrestling dream match, which is AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura. And then you have the sports entertainment dream match, which is these two iconic characters in John Cena and The Undertaker.
True.
And to not announce one of those two dream matches, that is ballsy on WWE's part. I think they assume, look, we've got a stack deck. We've got Ronda Rousey. We've got Brock Lesnar. We've got Roman Reigns. We've got Kurt Angle returning to WrestleMania. We have AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura. We have so many big marquee matchups. We don't have to announce this thing. And let's just see how it plays out on Sunday. I would think, that most people, I would be willing to guess 85% of fans expect this match is going to happen on Sunday. I don't think anybody would understand why they just would do all of this build-up, like Brad said, and then just not have a match. So the question now becomes, what's it going to be? What Undertaker are we going to see? How is it going to happen? So I really do applaud WWE for taking a gutsy, ballsy approach to building up this match on Sunday.
So I want to ask both of you guys, I tend to agree with you. I think the fans are going to care because it's Undertaker and John Cena. That's a given. But I don't know if it's fair for us as fans and as pundits, obviously, to discuss kind of the business side. We watch it as fans, so we have that side. The fan in us, how do we look at this, and are we excited? And it seems like all of us are going to be excited about John Cena and The Undertaker one way or the other. But on the business side, let's talk a little bit about whether or not, at this point, we kind of understand the business model that is the network and how it's shifted WWE's motives. The idea at this point is they understand everybody that's signed up for the network at this point is going to be watching WrestleMania. It's WrestleMania. Their goal now is to get new subscribers. And so I ask both of you, and Nick, kick it back over to you real quick to start it off. Do you feel like this approach that we've seen and the uncertainty of it, most people expecting that The Undertaker will be there, if let's say they do not show The Undertaker at all this week, there is no answer given, John Cena's supposed to be, storyline-wise, showing up to WrestleMania as a quote-unquote fan, the uncertainty, even though the expectation is there, is that likely to bring more new subscribers in your mind than if they would have announced it, officially confirmed it, we maybe saw The Undertaker or saw some of his pyro and Samantha, all the shenanigans that he normally does? Which one draws more interest in your mind?
I would think, I just don't think a guy like The Undertaker and a John Cena, I don't necessarily know that that's really bringing it. The matchup between the two of them, that could potentially bring in some new subscribers. But I think right now with WWE putting a little bit more focus on people like Ronda Rousey, who is a new superstar, Asuka, she's going for the title. I think these are the people that maybe could bring in more newer subscribers, maybe past subscribers who have decided they wanted to cancel the network, but they're big Ronda Rousey fans, so now they want to tune in. They want to see what she's going to do on Sunday night in her debut. I think that's going to bring in more subscribers as opposed to saying, hey, check out The Undertaker this Sunday, who has just been a staple of WWE for so long that I don't know he has the power to bring in new fans. So I really don't think that has much of an effect on bringing in new fans. But I'd like to get Brad's take on that.
Well, I think you make a lot of great points right there, Nick. I think when you have someone like a Ronda Rousey, it's going to bring in not only Ronda Rousey fans, new fans, MMA fans are just going to watch the same way they watched, Conor and Floyd, just as the intrigue of seeing one of their own in a new environment, in a new arena. I also think Kurt Angle is going to bring back some of those old fans. Just like, wait a minute, Kurt Angle's at WrestleMania? Oh, we got to watch this. I definitely think that's going to happen. And then when you have stuff like AJ and Shinsuke, people who may have canceled the network who said, man, I got to see that match. Now, with The Undertaker, though, I think that it also brings in more fans, or at least brings in people to re-sign up for the network if they did cancel, or just to watch the show in general, because it's just still interesting. It's like, hey, they're doing this weird thing where John Cena says The Undertaker doesn't have any balls, and it's not a match, but it is a match. I don't know. Maybe the American Badass is going to show up. Kid Rock's getting inducted. Wait, hold on, Kid Rock. There's your win there, Nick. There's your win. There's your championship right there. Kid Rock's going in the Hall of Fame. Detroit. There you go. Kid Rock's going to be there. Maybe they're going to do the American Badass. So I think the intrigue draws more people in. Right now, that's probably my most anticipated match, and it's not even official, just because I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, no, I think I 100% agree with both of you guys from a standpoint of the uncertainty of it all right now. I think they could have done more to build this up, the hype around it and everything. I understand kind of the way they went with this, but I really still think there was more they could have done to build up the uncertainty even further and gotten and made fans invest a little bit more. The other reason that I think, as we talk a little bit more about how fans, how much they care about this matchup at this point, beyond just kind of the normal standard, hey, it's The Undertaker and John Cena at WrestleMania, or just even it's The Undertaker's next match at WrestleMania. Is at the end of the day, who wins and who should win, and does it matter really who wins or loses in this particular matchup? Because really, what does either have to prove anymore? What do they have left? John Cena's really starting to kind of take that huge step back of the main event side of things. Whether he's going to come back for one more run, we assume, beat Ric Flair's streak. There's a lot of things left for him. But in the end, we kind of look at this as almost a transitional WrestleMania, a sense of we do think maybe there's one more out of The Undertaker. Nick, you and I have discussed this on previous shows, whether or not they should hype up The Undertaker's last match. I don't think leaving it hanging every single year and then obviously disappointing the fans that one year where he finally does decide I'm not coming back officially. I think not announcing that might be a bit of a mistake. But understanding those facts, does this matter? I mean, does it matter who actually wins or loses? And if it does not, does that maybe at this point kind of bring down the excitement level, at least in some people's eyes? Maybe not in ours, but in some people's eyes, does it bring down the level of excitement because it doesn't really matter as much? Brad, kick it off with you. What do you think?
As far as who wins, I think that in my opinion, this would be a time for The Undertaker to win. John Cena, like you say, he's taking a step back from the main event scene. This is actually probably his biggest WrestleMania match in several years. I mean, I'm trying to think of when the last time he was even in a title match at WrestleMania. I mean, he had I guess it was The Rock, wasn't it? Was that his last world title match? My lights went off there. In 2009, wasn't that the last or WrestleMania 29, wasn't that his last world title match?
Yeah, yes.
I think it was.
Let me turn those lights back on. There we go. But so I think with John Cena being out of the main event for so long and him coming back in this thing, I don't know. I think that he doesn't really need to at this point. I think Undertaker coming back, especially if he does it as the American Badass, would kind of give fans that feel-good moment a little bit. Like you see the return of the Undertaker, but he's a different Undertaker. Then he comes back and he beats John Cena. Fans are going to get up for it. That's the way I would do it if I was booking the show, because last year with him losing to Roman Reigns, we all thought, okay, that's Undertaker's last match, but it wasn't a good way, in my opinion, to end that WrestleMania. I know WrestleMania 33 got a lot of good reviews, but just to end it on that kind of down note, it really left something to be desired. And I think if he's coming back, he's the American Badass, he's Big Evil, he comes and he kicks John Cena's ass, last ride, tombstone, whatever, 1, 2, 3, it really gives the fans what they want to see. John Cena's not hurt by it whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And if anything, that's the way the Undertaker can finally ride off into the sunset. And if it is his last match, when next year's WrestleMania comes around, it's like, or at least he went out on top. I'm not going to be too disappointed if we don't get to see The Undertaker this year. I just think it's a better storybook ending for him, but that's just me.
Brad, who are you going with? Who are you going with to win?
I'll go with The Undertaker.
All right.
Yeah, I think The Undertaker wins. Yeah,
Nick,
for sure.
Nick, do fans care less as far as that goes? And then obviously give us your pick as well.
Yeah, I do. And that's the thing too. It's also John Cena, and we know that it's a fickle crowd with John Cena. You never know what kind of a reaction he's going to get. Typically at WrestleMania, he gets that big reaction. He gets that big pop. At least if he doesn't get it in the beginning of the match, he usually always earns it by the end. But this could be a crowd again where the Undertaker is big time over, and he's the big baby face going into this. And I think I got to 100% agree with Brad that, coming off of a big loss to Roman Reigns last year, where everyone really kind of thought that was it for the Undertaker, I think he could use that momentum, especially if he's not done. They always say it every year. Guys like Jim Ross, Steve Austin, they always say, as long as the Undertaker's got one more match in him, he's gonna have another match. So I don't see this being the conclusion of give the fans that big win to kind of make up for last year. It's kind of what they've been doing. If you look at the pattern of the Undertaker, since he lost to Brock Lesnar, the year after he beat Bray Wyatt to get that momentum back, then he loses again to Roman Reigns. So this would be the year for him to win, and give the crowd what they want to see, that big Undertaker win. And it really fits with the storyline that John Cena is bringing into WrestleMania, which has been desperation. He's lost all of his big matches. He couldn't get on the card. He couldn't win to get himself. He had to go from Raw over to SmackDown and compete at Fastlane. He couldn't win that match. By his own admission, he had lost every big match getting to WrestleMania. I think it's only an interesting or fitting storyline, Cap, that he loses to The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And this concludes a really bad WrestleMania season for Cena. And, he can kind of, who knows what he'll do after this. I don't know what his movie obligations are, if he's taking off time, but it always seems like he has some outside of WWE project right around the corner at all times. My pick is The Undertaker. That's who I think is going to win. That's who I think should win. And I think we get the American Badass on Sunday. That's who I think we get.
I think I agree with both of you. I think The Undertaker does win. I think coming after last year's WrestleMania, even 2 out of the last 3 or whatever it's been now, a loss. I think it makes a lot of sense at this point. Give him a little bit more momentum, because if I were a betting man next year, has to be at this point, surely to goodness it's his last. And like I said, hopefully they do maybe announce that ahead of time. I don't know who really is even left at this point. It wouldn't surprise me if they try to give him one more final kind of passing of the torch, so to speak, to somebody at that point. He'd take another loss. I don't think it's this year, though. I think obviously The Undertaker is really the heavy favorite. But it's interesting, guys. Let us know what you think about John Cena, The Undertaker, how they've built this up. Let us know in the comments section wherever you're watching this video. That is the main event, though. And Brad, I really appreciate you coming on to talk. We'll have to have you back again to kind of talk some of the main stories of pro wrestling as it goes on, but talk a little bit about what you have going on. And I know you got a lot of stuff going on, as Nick mentioned in the beginning, with Booker T. Some of the stuff that we've seen of him, even though he was, even prior to him leaving the announce booth, he was still very active on social media, his federation down there in Houston, a lot of fun stuff that he's been doing, showing some of the training behind the scenes. I would imagine it's got to be a trip working with Booker T. I've always found him to be like super entertaining. But tell everybody where to go and where to follow you guys.
First off, Chris, you know the one reason you should definitely bet on the Undertaker to win at WrestleMania. Do you know the reason?
Where is he from?
He's from Houston, Texas. That's the reason
Houston.
Right there. But anyway, I just had to get that in there. That was for you, Chris. But no, as far as things I'm doing with Booker, obviously the Heated Conversations podcast, Booker and I are actually going to be at Radio Row this week. It'd be the first time I'm getting to go there, as well as Booker's first time on this side of the microphone. So that's going to be pretty interesting for us to do. And the reality of wrestling, obviously, we're on Fight TV. We now stream on Booker's social media our full-length episodes down here in Houston. And big announcement that came this week, we're doing our own version of the Royal Rumble next Saturday, not this Saturday, but next Saturday at the World Gym Arena, which is our own arena for reality wrestling, 22,000 square feet in Texas City, Texas. And just big news, NXT star Brennan Williams, he is signed to NXT. He was trained by Booker T, and he's been given the go-ahead by Triple H and the powers that be to come home for one night, and he's going to be entering our Rumble, which is called The Last Stand, as his old character, Marcellus Black. So NXT's Brennan Williams coming back home. So, yeah, and you can follow us at realitywrestling.com and me on all social media at Brad Gilmore.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great stuff, man. I really love it, guys. Check him out. And Brad, really appreciate you coming on. And of course, we'll talk to you very soon.
Have me back anytime. Thanks, guys.
Guys,
Thanks,
Brad Gilmore, man. I think awesome thing. We really appreciate everybody checking out the deal as far as the main event every week now to lead us off and kick us off. And Nick, I think, you know, it was a worthy conversation to discuss, obviously, the main event and kind of what's been going on with that. Obviously, we've got a lot of other things to discuss too, though. This is a situation where at this point now we know what's kind of going on. That was the only match that we're not 100% positive about. We didn't really know what was going to happen with it. We still really don't. But everything else is announced. Everything else is confirmed. And we've got a lot to discuss. And I think the next proper topic to kind of jump into is Ronda Rousey. Because, Nick, you and I have had a lot of thoughts about how they're utilizing her, how they should utilize her. Talk a little bit about this week on Raw and what you thought. She got physical again. Stephanie kind of went over. It was an interesting segment, I thought, in the beginning. But again, they're doing a good job, I think, of at least getting people interested in all of this. I mean, the fans have really held on, Nick, to the story of Ronda Rousey's first match. I think it's been hit or miss in some cases over the past few weeks, though, as far as how they're positioning Ronda, how much they're using her on the mic, and just some of the uncomfortableness, I guess you can say, that is her on the mic. And so there have been some hit or misses. But, Nick, I do definitely think they're making it go in the right direction now. And so talk a little bit about what you think, obviously, as far as Ronda Rousey, her use this particular time on Raw, and what we think, obviously, of the WrestleMania match coming up. And then, of course, we'll get into our predictions in here in just a few.
Yeah, I thought it was a good final segment. Like you said, there's obvious green aspects to Ronda Rousey. It's funny because you take a talent like that who is so well known as an athlete. She just transcended the sport of mixed martial arts. She's an absolute veteran, yet you can really tell that she is a rookie in the pro wrestling environment. So it's very difficult to establish someone like that, bring her in and establish her as the badass that we know she is, right, in an entertainment forum. Because this is, as much as professional wrestling, of course, mirrors a combat sport, it is, after all, entertainment, and it's a television show. And people like Ronda Rousey, I think, really prove that, you can have that ability, you can have that innate athletic ability, much like a Kurt Angle. But, there is going to be a process of transitioning into what is ultimately entertainment. I think she's handling it very well. There's a lot of people that have been arguing, I've been seeing over the past couple of weeks saying, hey, maybe WWE should have held off on Ronda Rousey, let her train a little bit more. I don't think that's true.
No.
I think when you have someone like Ronda Rousey, you have the potential to put her out there at WrestleMania. Let's remember, she already was at WrestleMania before. She did a brief segment with The Rock. She got physical in the ring. So when you have that opportunity from a financial standpoint, from a mainstream media standpoint, you have to capitalize on it. So the question then becomes, how do you do it in the most protective way? And I think WWE is handling that very well with Ronda Rousey. They're limiting the amount of work she's doing in the ring, of course, very much so. We've only seen her get physical just a little bit. And they're limiting the amount of work that she has to do on the mic. They're not having her come out and cut 10 to 15-minute promos by herself in the middle of the ring. She's sort of guarded and protected by veterans like Kurt Angle, Triple H, and Stephanie McMahon, who are huge pros and know exactly what they're doing when it comes to all things pro wrestling related. So overall, like you said, I agree. There have been some hiccups. There have been some bumps along the way, but I think she's doing really well, and I very much I think at the end of the day, the question is, do you look forward to seeing what she can do on Sunday? I very much look forward to that.
Well, and I agree with you. I think that, when you really put it all things into perspective, this is going to be kind of the classic case in my mind, Nick, of it's going to either be amazing or it's going to be kind of a disaster. And I don't know that either one really will. I don't think the disaster part of it, if it turns out to kind of be a cluster, I don't think it's going to end up hurting her. I do think when you finally get to the match itself, I really anticipate a ton of protection physically from a standpoint of most of the match will probably be carried by Triple H and Kurt Angle, which, has some risks in and of itself with Kurt Angle at this point in his career. I think he's proven, obviously, though, that he can go in the ring, that he's going to be okay, that he's one of those that when he does get in the ring, he pushes himself to the limit no matter what, kind of like Daniel Bryan, that we'll talk about here soon, gets back and actually gets some physicality for the first time in years, and he's out there taking power bombs off the ring apron. I think Kurt Angle is similar. He's going to do whatever it takes to make that a compelling matchup. And then I think, of course, you're going to see Ronda Rousey. They're pushing the submission stuff, which makes a lot of sense with her UFC background. And I think that I think the physicality part of it could be a disaster because I don't know that Stephanie is quite equipped to kind of hide some of the weaknesses of Ronda Rousey. But I also know that Stephanie is through and through a McMahon, and she's going to do whatever it takes to put her body on the line as well, which has its own risk in and of itself. And I think that she's going to really do whatever it takes to put Ronda over in this setting. And I think that's interesting. As far as Raw this week and everything, and again, it kind of goes back to the same conversation, Nick, that I think you and I are going to have. I think week after week that we're going to see a really good side of Ronda as far as how they utilize her on Raw. And then I think there's going to be some weeks, Nick, where we obviously look at it and say, man, that fell a little bit short. It was a little bit awkward. And there was some of that, obviously, this week as well. I think that, Stephanie is one of those that is a fantastic talker. She's really good at covering up some of the things that maybe Ronda has messed up on or whatever the case may be. I really do think that was good.
Yeah.
And I also think that what I really liked about it this week is I was wondering if they were ever going to kind of go personal with Ronda and the finale of her UFC career. It was less than stellar. Two major losses that were definitive and I mean, very decisive. I think I think the kind of personal shot at Ronda, as far as we know what happens to you when you lose, was just kind of the touch of it. As Ronda gets more comfortable in this setting and understands how over those types of comments go, I would imagine that a lot of the people opposite her, whether it's Stephanie further or whether it's a Charlotte or anybody else that they may pit her up against, I think you're going to expect some more of that stuff as far as some of those personal shots that do tend to go over really, really well. And I was, again, pleased to see some of it because I thought it really does elevate overall the real life drama that this storyline has and entangled it in as it is. And so I really do think that's going to be interesting to kind of watch and see. But I honestly think that Ronda, she has the potential, Nick, and we've talked about her potential, but I think she really does have the potential to be, without a question, the female version of Brock Lesnar. I don't know yet. I mean, I know that it's probably in the cards for her to have a title run at some point. I still think we're months and months away from that, most likely, possibly even next year at WrestleMania. I do think we're a little ways from that. I think they just kind of understand that she's a hot commodity no matter what. There doesn't need to be a title there. But I do think that she has the ability. It's really going to be about how comfortable in the ring she is, because at some point she's got to cross that threshold of being rocky and a little awkward. She's got to start getting to the point where she can cut a decent promo, even if it's short and to the point. She's got to be able to do that, and she's got to be able to carry herself in the ring and make it believable, because there's a way, Brock has been able to do that with very limited moves anymore. He's actually not a bad wrestler, but he doesn't need all of that anymore as he's just this UFC guy that looks big, that looks mean, and he comes out and he acts that way in the ring. And I think that that's kind of the way they can position her as well. But she is going to have to start, Nick, at some point. And again, we're way too early to see how quickly that could happen. And this Sunday is going to be kind of a good telltale. There'll be some jitters, there'll be some nerves, but in the end, I really do. I'll go back to my original statement, Nick. I think this could either be a train wreck of the best kind or the worst kind. And I don't think that if it's a train wreck of the worst kind, that it necessarily hurts her in any way. Her style is probably going to cover up some of that anyway. But I am really looking forward to this match. As Brad mentioned that Taker and Cena was the match he was looking forward to, I'm looking forward to a lot of these matches, but I really am looking forward to Ronda Rousey this Sunday and seeing what she's actually able to do in a match setting, regardless of how limited it might and possibly will be this Sunday.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I think there's just a lot of great buildup going into it. This is just sort of a babyface versus heel thing, I mean, and look, and let's not take out of the equation Kurt Angle. I mean, I think a lot of people are excited to see Kurt Angle back in the ring. Here's his WrestleMania return. And, as we speculated a couple of weeks ago, I really think that, and I think you agreed with me as well, that, Kurt Angle and Triple H are going to be the two doing most of the work.
Yep.
So the match is really going to be Kurt Angle versus Triple H.
Right.
So, how excited are we to see Kurt Angle versus Triple H, which I think is going to be really great to see. Kurt Angle's return to WrestleMania. And then you sort of add to that mix whatever Ronda Rousey is going to provide. I agree with you. I'm very excited for it.
Moving on, though, before we do, let's kind of give our predictions. I don't think there's a chance in hell Ronda loses this match, Nick, so I think that's a given. I think Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle win, and then they can finally maybe, follow up with a little bit more of that potentially, but I think that pretty quickly after Mania, we're going to see Ronda start moving on into more of a wrestler setting. But as far as this Sunday goes, I'm definitely going with Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle, or as Kurt called her on Monday, what was it? Ronda Rowdy? So I'm going to go with Ronda Rowdy and Kurt Angle. Who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really bring in Ronda Rousey and have her lose her debut match. So I'm going Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle here.
Let's switch over and let's switch gears a little bit. And
I think the question is, well, what's the finish? I'm saying Stephanie McMahon taps out to the armbar.
Yeah.
That's my.
Yeah, no, I'm hands down without a question. I agree with you. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's jump over to the women. We'll talk kind of both simultaneously, and I'm looking forward to both of these matches. I think Nia Jax's interview on this week on Raw was great. I think Alexa Bliss with Mickie James are really in a zone right now. Alexa is fantastic as a heel. She's fantastic as a champion. She's fantastic as one of those catty, bitchy girls that you hated in high school. I mean, her and Mickie are absolutely selling this very, very well, and I think the real life issues and the real life things that Nia Jax has had to overcome in her life is being played up really, really well. I think they kept it at a semi-minimum though, where it didn't get too much in that direction, but they've elevated enough and brought it to the surface enough that I think it's been effective. And then, of course, on the other side of it, you've got Asuka's streak, Nick. And by the way, I wanted to double check because, again, I don't watch a lot of NXT and I don't follow everybody that comes into the WWE and their careers ahead of time. Is the 300, or what was it, 300 or it was over 2 years maybe, actually. I don't know. It was like 2.5 years of the undefeated streak. Is that all in WWE, Nick? When they were doing the promo stuff on Raw this week, they were putting over the amount of time, the amount of days, I think. And then also, it was like 900? It wasn't 900 maybe. Yeah, maybe it was like 900 days and some odd or whatever, but it was like over 2 years that she had been undefeated. I'm like, I don't remember her being around that long, at least on main TV. Was it NXT and included?
Yes.
Okay, so it was
including her time in it. Yes, just 100% undefeated in WWE.
But she's been around that long, like 2.5 years or something.
Yeah,
wow.
Absolutely.
Okay, so obviously you've got that, and then you've got Charlotte Flair and Nick. You know, as we look,
you got to remember her. I mean, she had a really extensive NXT women's title run, and I think a lot of people forget that. You know, it just because that momentum is sort of carried on to the main roster.
Well, true.
And again, sort of her time in NXT is sort of blended in with the main roster.
Well, and again, I mean, there's a lot of new fans now and older fans, I guess, too, that are watching because of the network. They're really keeping up with NXT a lot more than I do, and so they're, you know, it was hard for me to really fathom how long she had been in the company for that reason. But I think that it's an amazing story, and I think the fact that they're highlighting it so much now might mean that there is a good chance that it's coming to an end. And as we kind of talk broadly about the championship matches, and of course we're going to talk about the other championship matches here soon, as far as the men's side, Nick, I try to look at things a little, and we talked about this earlier, I try to look at WrestleMania and any pay-per-view a little bit logically as much as I can, as far as we're not going to have every title change hands. And so you really have to pick and choose which ones you think are going to change based on timing of it all, the story behind it, who it is. And I think that I've done a pretty good job of that, but I could be very surprised by how many titles. There is opportunity in damn near everywhere you look that the titles are going to change hands. I mean, it really could.
Well, let's do this. Why don't you run it down?
Okay.
You give me your title changes, and I'll tell you if I agree or disagree.
Just across the board.
Across the board. Here we go.
Okay. I think that Charlotte retains over Asuka, so that does not change hands, which then makes me believe...
I disagree.
Keep
going.
Which then makes me then go to, which we had this conversation on a previous episode, but then that leads me to the other side, and because I think Charlotte retains and breaks the streak, then I think it leaves it open for Nia Jax to win the title there.
Absolutely incorrect. I disagree. Keep going.
So then on the other side of it, I think because it's Roman's time to shine, I'm going to say Roman wins and becomes the new champion, Universal Champion, which then means on the SmackDown side, I think obviously AJ Styles is going to retain.
So I'm going to agree with you completely there in the main event picture. I don't know. I think AJ Styles Nakamura. I think that's debatable. Honestly, I think I might go Nakamura on that.
Then here,
this is AJ Styles' second title reign in WWE.
Yeah, but
he's had a really good one since he won the title. I don't see right now why he has to keep the title. He really is just, bar none, the top performer that company has right now. I say give it to Shinsuke Nakamura. This is his time. This is his sort of run. I like to compare Nakamura to guys like the Chris Benoits and the Rey Mysterios, who I don't think WWE is fully on board with a guy like Nakamura, just like they weren't fully on board with guys like Chris Benoit and Rey Mysterio. But because they were so beloved by the fans, you know, the internet fan, the pro wrestling fan, loved not so much the sports entertainment fan, but the pro wrestling fan, loved the guys like the Benoits and the Mysterios, that I think they were sort of gifted the title as more of a thank you for everything that you've done in the business. And I think Nakamura is very similar in that regard. Here's a guy that doesn't speak very good English, so he can't cut the long promo, which is very essential and very key in the character-driven WWE. For a guy like Nakamura to succeed as much as he has in WWE is very rare. So I think this is his chance to win that title and then go on and sort of have a short title reign, maybe, you know, up until SummerSlam, maybe an over the summer type reign, and then that'll be it for Shinsuke Nakamura. I don't want to say that's going to be it, like he's going to retire in September, but I think that'll probably be I don't think this is the very beginning of Shinsuke Nakamura's 8, 9, 10 title runs in WWE.
See, Nick,
I tend to think this is maybe one of one, if not maybe one of two title reigns that Nakamura has. I don't see any more than that.
I don't disagree with you, but when you look at the way you're picturing it, and this is kind of where I go back, I agree with you in the sense that it feels like Nakamura's time, AJ's had a good run, all of that is true. But if we go by your rules at this point and your predictions, then that means literally every title is changing hands with the exception of Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax as far as the main events. You're talking about Roman Reigns, Nakamura, and then Asuka. And I think one of those three does not happen. I'm not necessarily saying I'm right. I just try to think logically from a standpoint of I don't think from even as basic, Nick, and most people don't think about these things. I try to, though, the flow of the card in the sense of, you know, highs and lows. And I think because they're trying to save the huge pop at the end of the night for Roman Reigns, they're going to be very careful who gets to steal his thunder. And I don't know that Asuka is that person, and I don't know that Nakamura is. And I also just think because it steals a little bit from their victories on top of that, I just think when you look at when the timing is right now we know one thing. WWE feels Roman Reigns' time is right now. That's the only real lock that I have going into this. I think everything, and keep in mind, I don't even call that a complete lock. I think the WWE, if they wanted to throw a curveball, Roman could lose and then win it back the next night on Raw. You always have that as an outside chance. I don't think that's what they want. Normally they want the conclusion at WrestleMania for big moments like this. I think Roman's as close to a lock as you get. And if that's the case, who gets to steal a little bit of that thunder, especially given the way that the fans react to Roman already and how much they try to protect and coddle him as it relates to the fans? Nakamura wins that match. I mean, I think fans really take that out on a Roman in a sense. I mean, and also if Nakamura wins it, I think it really takes away from Roman winning, which is what WWE desperately doesn't want to happen. Fans aren't going to be disappointed if AJ retains. I think there's that going for him. I do agree with you in the sense that Asuka could win, Nakamura loses, and then Roman still wins. I do think that's all possible. But I think when you look at the flow of the card, the way it all could go down, I think, Asuka has to lose at some point. So I'm going with that more of a I think it makes more sense all the way across the board. Asuka gets that win, that loss out of the way. Charlotte gets over like $1 million at that point. And I do think that one's up in the air. I won't be surprised if Asuka wins. I really won't, and it's hard not to go with her as the victor. But I don't think you get Asuka and you get Nakamura winning. I don't think those two, and all 3 out of those 4 title changes, Nick, I just don't think there's any way. I don't. Now, pick and choose which ways you want to go, but I don't think there's any chance, both the women change hands or both the men change hands, and I think that you're really going to have to pick which one you believe, Asuka or Nakamura. It's one of the other in my mind, and then when I don't think that both men's titles are going to change hands, then it really leads me to think Nakamura loses, Asuka loses. I mean, it's just... I don't know.
Well, look, if you got to pick one, then I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with Nakamura in that case. And I do understand what you're saying of those 4 top titles. Then it would be AJ Styles that retains over Nakamura. I think from the standpoint of Brock Lesnar's future, unless they hammer out a new deal with Brock Lesnar on Sunday morning, he is not winning that title, because I don't think the question is whether or not Roman Reigns wins. I think the real question is, does Brock Lesnar go back to UFC?
Sure.
Now, Paul Heyman's been making the media rounds. He's been saying, Brock Lesnar's made it very clear that he wants to return to the octagon. He wants to go back to UFC. I'll believe that when I see that. To me, that's more of a case of him probably just trying to drum up a better deal for a new contract in WWE. So I think the real question is whether or not Brock Lesnar is going to go to UFC. But I don't think WWE is going to risk their title on Brock Lesnar. So I think it's a lock that Roman Reigns wins that match, and couple it with the fact that, like you said, Roman Reigns is their guy right now.
Right.
It is his time to win that match. So both of those things combined, Roman Reigns wins there. I don't think they end Asuka's streak. I just don't see it. I don't see it making sense for it to end before she gets that title. So I see her winning. I'm going to go with AJ Styles and Nakamura. Now, the thing that's interesting is you're talking about the 4 top titles. Segueing now into the other title matches, you still have the United States Championship. You have the Intercontinental Championship. Does Seth Rollins win? Does Finn Balor win? I think one of the 2 of those guys desperately needs to win that title.
They're not going to, though.
Miz needs to continue his run as Intercontinental champion. I think he's won it so many times. I think this is, and it feels like, the appropriate time for the Miz to drop the title. My question to you is, who wins? Is it Seth Rollins or is it Finn Balor?
I completely disagree with you 100%. I think the Miz retains, and the only reason why is because the way they've built all of this up. I think they've given Finn his time over both guys. They obviously just this last week gave Seth Rollins the rub going into this Sunday. And I think really it all boils down to timing, in the sense that they want the Miz to be the guy to break the record of longest IC title run. And that's not over yet. And they've been pushing that. Yes, they could. And look, they've teased that people were going to that. They've teased it in the past of people that were close to breaking records and then they fell short. So it's not unlike WWE to say, yeah, Miz, we like you and we think you're doing a great job with the IC title, but we're not giving you the record just now. But because of the attention span of the WWE fans these days, and just WWE in general, how many times are you going to have come back up in the future for someone to get this close to break that record? I don't think the Miz loses. So if I thought that, and even though, because I do agree with you, Nick, in its totality, just on paper, he's had it long enough. But the only reason I'm going with the Miz is because of that title streak, and because I think he's going to hold it. They want him to have that. He really is one of, if not the best Intercontinental champions of all time. I think that they want him to have that record to kind of solidify that, because so many people are still kind of up in the air on whether Miz is overrated or whether he's as good as what he's kind of been accredited with as far as WWE writing. I mean, a world title run. I mean, a major one. He's obviously had the Intercontinental title many, many times. They've always kind of pushed him as a main event guy to a degree, even if he was on that second tier. I don't think he loses, to be honest. I really don't. And keep in mind, going back to the other 4 too, just as kind of a standard statement here, I really think that WWE has done such a good job of building Roman Reigns up to this point that I think they want some title changes, but they want the title changes that are going to shine the least, in a sense that it's not going to take away from Roman Reigns' moment. They really believe that much in Roman Reigns, and therefore, how can you get some title changes that fans are going to appreciate, but yet not take away from the big moment? That is, they're going to be almost disappointed by the time it gets to Brock. If it goes my route, if it goes the way I'm talking about going, they're going to be they're going to be pissed at themselves. They're going to be waiting for Roman Reigns to win that title. I think you're going to have Nia Jax again. And to me, this is the perfect booking for a lot of different reasons, but especially if you want Roman Reigns to have his night and his time in the sun. Nia Jax wins early on in the night, which makes it like, okay, hey, that was fun. She deserves it. Right. That's great. It's feel good, but not too feel good. Nobody cares about that as much as they do Asuka probably at this point, or Nakamura. You have Asuka fall short and she loses, so that's a huge, huge moment because everybody's expecting her to win. Charlotte wins, and everybody's just flipping out a little bit over that. But again, disappointed. Then AJ Styles wins, and again, they're not mad about it, so you're not having any riots going on.
Sure.
And then you end up having... and then The Miz wins. So again, they understand it, and it makes sense storyline-wise, so he can break that record. Maybe they're disappointed about that one, but they're not going to riot. Then you have Nakamura lose, and then you get to Roman Reigns, and he wins. And that doesn't even go into the other.
Where do you put Undertaker and Cena?
Ooh.
And giving the audience that feel-good moment if the Undertaker wins that match.
I think it's got to be somewhere really like smack dab in the middle of the whole thing. Not in the beginning, but not anywhere near the end. I think that's somewhere in the beginning. I think Asuka and Charlotte Flair, and this might be a telltale sign of who wins, obviously, as you lead up to that and you see what happens with Nia Jax and all that. But I think Asuka and Charlotte Flair goes on right before Roman and them. And then that also doesn't leave, as we get into some of these others, because we only got a few minutes left. I mean, Daniel Bryan coming back, I think there is a swerve that's about to happen. I think Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon lose this match. I think Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn win. And I think most likely, if it makes more sense, at least it makes more sense on my end, for McMahon to do the turn. We really haven't seen him in recent weeks, obviously. And obviously now, instead of it being McMahon completely anti-Kevin and Sami Zayn, you've had kind of Daniel Bryan somewhat siding with them and playing a in-between heel and babyface role. I think him being able to return to the ring, they want him as the biggest babyface they can have him. So McMahon coming back, since we haven't really seen him, and making some sort of big swerve and costing Daniel Bryan the match, stacking the deck against him, making him a bigger superstar in the process, I think that makes more sense. So again, fans are disappointed at that point. By the time it gets to Roman Reigns, if they play it the way that I'm talking about playing it, people may be a little disappointed with the overall card, and they'll look back at it and be a little pissed off. But I honestly think that's the way they're going to go, and I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. So, again, that kind of goes down our picks as far as I think Miz wins. I think Nakamura loses. I think Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon lose. I think that Charlotte Flair wins. I think that Nia Jax wins. I think that Roman Reigns wins. Was that all of them?
Yeah.
AJ Styles wins.
And
the Miz
I mean,
wins.
and look, I can totally see this, and again, I see where you're looking at it from that total flow of a show. But again, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on a couple of these.
All right,
again,
run down those six then. Run down those six.
I'll say what?
Run down those six that we just talked about. Who do you have in the Miz?
Yeah, well, all right. So in the Miz match, I'm gonna go with Finn Balor on this.
Okay.
I'm going to say Seth Rollins is a guy that I think WWE wants to retain in the main event picture.
Yeah.
They're probably going to want to put him back up in there. Finn Balor is a guy who I don't see ever really being catapulted into the main event scene. I think 2017 was a real big telltale sign for how WWE really views Finn Balor as more of that mid-card guy. So I think he's much more suitable, or I think WWE feels he's more suitable as maybe an Intercontinental Champion. I just feel like it's Miz's time. So I say I'm going with Finn Balor on that one. I don't see Asuka's streak ending. I don't see it ending without a title win and a bit of a title run. So I'm going with Asuka on that. And thereby then I believe that Alexa Bliss is going to retain, because I think we're going to see more out of this Alexa Bliss Nia Jax storyline. I really like what they've been doing in recent weeks. The pairing of Alexa Bliss and Mickie James has been really great. I don't see that ending anytime soon. So I think Alexa Bliss retains there. Going into your main events, again, we've already talked about Cena, Undertaker. We all feel confident in the Undertaker. I'm going to say Shinsuke Nakamura picks up the win, and then that kind of leaves us agreeing on Roman Reigns. Now that brings me to my grand plan for who I think is going to be Braun Strowman's WrestleMania partner.
All right, let's hear it.
End on that note. All right? So here it is. I'm going to lay out what I think should happen and what would be great. And then I'm going to tell you what's probably going to happen, and it's going to be garbage.
Before you do that, did you ever say who was going to win the Daniel Bryan?
I agree with you. Agree with you 100% there. I think Kevin Owens, and WWE loves to position Daniel Bryan as the underdog, the fighting underdog. So I love the idea of Shane McMahon. He obviously has a grudge. It obviously makes sense for Shane to turn on Daniel Bryan with all of the disagreeing they've been doing on SmackDown in the past few months. It's a built-in storyline. Shane McMahon, he turns, he sides, and now you've got McMahon, Owens, Zayn, and they're all stacking this deck against Daniel Bryan. The deck is always stacked against Daniel Bryan in WWE. I think they'll keep going with that storyline. I think it's great. And then he can have some great singles matches with Kevin Owens, with Sami Zayn, and maybe even a singles match against Shane McMahon.
All right. All right, back to your grand plan.
I agree with you there.
All right.
So here we go. Oh, and then as far as the other tag title match is concerned, the Bludgeon Brothers, the New Day's not going to win this match. The Usos have held the title since 1983. It's time for them to lose this match. The Bludgeon Brothers are sort of the new up-and-coming tag team. I see them winning this match. So here we go, Braun Strowman. So the show opens. You've got the kickoff show. Braun Strowman is there. You see him in the back, and Kurt Angle comes to him and says, "Hey, Braun, who's your partner?" Braun doesn't have one yet. He says, "The clock's ticking, pal. If you don't find a partner by the end of the night, you got no match." So during the kickoff show, Braun hits the ring. He grabs the mic. He yells to the back, "Somebody come out here and be my partner." So you get like Zack Ryder's music hits. He comes out, "I'll be your partner." And much like Strowman did to Kurt Hawkins on Raw, no way, he destroys Ryder. "No way, I want another partner. Somebody come out here, be my partner." The Miz Tarage's music hits. Axel and Dallas come out. They say, "We'll both be your partner." Braun Strowman says, "Nah," he destroys him. He goes to the back. He sees like Dolph Ziggler there. He says, "Be my partner." Dolph says, "Braun, I would love to be your partner. I asked Kurt Angle. He said it has to be a guy from the Raw roster." So Strowman destroys Ziggler. Okay, so then the announce team hypes up throughout the night as we progress. Is Strowman going to find a partner? He doesn't have a partner yet. Well, we've got Elias, who's been teasing over the past couple of weeks that he's going to do some grand performance at WrestleMania. So here it is. We now come to this point where it's Elias's performance, and I would love to see him. He's got a backing band. It's him on the guitar. He plays this great song with the band, and he's destroying New Orleans, and he's ripping on all their sports teams, and it's the biggest, best performance he's ever done. And all of a sudden, the music hits. Here comes Braun. Braun destroys the entire band. He lays out Elias. He grabs Elias's lifeless body, drags him into the ring, picks up a mic, says, "Kurt, I've got my partner." Now, from a logic standpoint, he's got to be, Elias has to be conscious in order to agree to do the match. So, the referee comes down, Braun Strowman, maybe, Elias is coming to. Braun Strowman says, be my partner. Shoves the mic in his face. Elias says, okay. He doesn't want to get destroyed anymore. So Sheamus and Cesaro come out. The ref comes out. Braun Strowman just annihilates Elias again. The bell rings, and Braun Strowman basically just faces the bar on his own with Elias just dead in the corner the whole time, and he wins the match. And he becomes the tag team champions along with Elias, who never even stepped foot in the ring. I think that would be a fun, cool, gimmicky way for it to go down with Braun Strowman. Now, what I think is going to happen is it'll be the Big Show, and who cares? So so there you go. There's
yeah.
And maybe if you think what I just laid out is garbage, then maybe you prefer the Big Show. I don't know.
No, I think that would be great, and I think because Elias doesn't really have a place on the card, I think that would be awesome, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe not go in that particular direction, but something similar. Maybe all the other stuff is cut out, but obviously somehow begrudgingly, Braun forces Elias to be his partner. Yeah, and I think Elias could be that guy. I think if I was leaning on which way I'm going to think they go, I think that probably Big Show is his partner, and they come out. Right. And obviously, I think...
And you got the two giants, and it's, they're the monster of a tag team.
But here's the thing, though.
The big payoff is that nobody cares.
Yes, but here's the reason why I lean that the fact that just because they've got so many other things they're thinking about, I think hopefully if they're smart, and I like to give WWE credit when I can. I used to not, but I think maybe they're a little smarter about some of these things. I'm going to say that you're really putting yourselves in a hole when you have Big Show and Braun. Like, who's supposed to beat them? I mean, nobody can beat Braun by himself. I mean, nobody thinks it's real. If he could compete by himself, everybody would still pick him, and he'd probably win. I don't think the bar is really over that much. I like them both. Right. I'm kind of over them.
But again, I think they're in. Yeah, I think they're just like the Usos. They've held the titles for so long. They've beaten pretty much everybody.
Yes.
I think maybe we both agree that no matter what happens, Braun's team is winning that match at WrestleMania.
Right, which is maybe, and I didn't get to give my pick on the other tag team thing. I think maybe because, again, I do think Braun wins, and somehow they kind of keep it away to make it like it's himself as the tag team champions. I think that maybe the Usos win one more time, because I do think at some point the Bludgeon Brothers will actually end up winning, but I think it needs to be a one-on-one. I think they added New Day partially to kind of give them an out where Usos can pin them. So I think Usos, I would guess at this point, my pick would be the Usos actually end up retaining, which then brings us to Braun winning the match, but I don't know with who. I think they need to be careful with that. I think someone that he doesn't get along with, that they could ultimately feud like an Elias makes more sense. And I think because they're both semi-comedy guys now, and I think they've done it really well with Braun, but Elias is really well over in the back. You can tell just by the way they have everybody put him over, like John Cena did it in his promo this week. I think Elias is over. I think people like him. They love his gimmick, and it doesn't really matter what he's involved with. But I think the dynamic of these two guys. So I'm going to go with not the Big Show. I think Braun wins, whoever his tag team partner is. So we'll make a pick that way, because we can't really predict what we don't know. But I am going to predict, as far as, what happens. I think somehow Elias does end up in that match. I really do. I think Elias probably over Big Show, because, yes, they could just go with the simple Big Show or a Kane or somebody like that. But they really put themselves in a corner. And they already have the Bludgeon Brothers over there with that same kind of issue. They're so big and they're so dominant. You really can't have that too much. It's great to see a Kane and Undertaker type of thing. We're like, who's supposed to beat these guys? But I don't think they've got anybody that could beat them, and so they'll have to beat themselves. I think that ultimately Elias and Braun are believable. They'll win, but but I also think that there's enough of a dynamic there where eventually they lose the titles because they can't get along, and then it sets up a good feud maybe between the two of them. So yeah, I definitely, I'm going to go with Elias being involved with that, and I think they ultimately win. Before we get out of here, Nick, then I guess, man, I mean, just talking about the matches though, and so many options, Nick. Does it go my way? Does it go my way and people are disappointed, but it gives Roman the opportunity to shine? Or are we going to go your way where honestly, storyline-wise, it makes a lot of sense for The Miz to lose the title, Asuka to win the title, Nakamura to win the title, Roman Reigns. I mean, there could be a shitload of title changes. Every one of them could technically change if WWE wanted to go that route. I would be really shocked if they did, though.
Right, and it's again, and it's WrestleMania, and WWE tends to sort of look at WrestleMania as, the blow off.
Right.
It rewards the talent.
Yeah.
If it looks like it's leading somewhere, it typically goes there. You don't see a lot of swerves at WrestleMania. You don't see a lot of, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. Brock Lesnar defeating The Undertaker's probably, in recent memory, one of the only times that's really happened. In fact, WWE actually put up a video on Instagram not too long ago asking what's the biggest WrestleMania upset of all time, and they only had 5 matches listed.
Yeah.
And one of them was Jericho losing to Fandango, which I don't really think is that big of an upset because who really cares about that match,
Right.
John Cena losing to The Miz. All right, that was pretty much an upset. But again, that was setting up The Rock versus John Cena.
Yeah.
So that wasn't really about The Miz winning.
Yeah.
So, again, I feel like WrestleMania season trends in a certain direction. And when you get there, it usually pays off in that way. We could get those swerves and those surprises like in the Daniel Bryan match.
Right.
We could get something where, Shinsuke Nakamura does win, and maybe a lot of people weren't expecting that to happen, but for the most part, I kind of tend to think it'll go in the way it should go. But it's more about the spectacle and it's more about the presentation. And I'll tell you what, this WrestleMania has the potential. I think this is, we've done a lot of disagreeing in this episode. So next week's episode is going to be really fun because we're going to really get to look and see, hey, to bookend, who wins, Dallas or Detroit? And then, if it ends up being Gilmore over there, we're gonna have to bring Houston back on and take it up with him. Good thing we didn't get all of his picks because he probably would end up being
hey, real quick,
destroying both of us.
One final pick we didn't do. Randy Orton, Bobby Roode, Mahal, and Rusev. Quick pick.
Yeah. It could go Rusev.
Hey, man,
so over.
I'm going with Rusev only because
I'm going with Rusev
only because I think the Miz retains. Because I'm going in the route that very few titles are going to change hands. I think that one is room. There is room for that one. Of course, keep in mind Orton just won this, and maybe they want to set up a one-on-one. It wouldn't surprise me if Orton retains either. But I really think they need to liven it up a little bit more. So I think Rusev actually. I think they go with Rusev. I think it's Rusev Day, man. Come on.
Now is the time, we talked about this before. I think the whole Rusev Day thing at some point, that's going to die down. It's not going to be as big of a deal. Reports were indicating that Rusev was put into this match because he's such a hot merchandise seller right now. And his Rusev Day shirts and his calendar and everything are moving like hotcakes. That's probably going to eventually die down a little bit. So now is the time to cash in on Rusev and Rusev Day and the momentum that he has. So I'm going with Rusev, but like I said, Chris, we've done a lot of disagreeing on the show. Next week's going to be really fun to look back and see how we did.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing we definitely can agree on is that this WrestleMania is stacked. It's loaded, and it has the potential to be one of the best WrestleManias in recent memory. And I, for one, absolutely loved WrestleMania last year. The stage is set for WrestleMania 34, to top that,
Yep.
let's see if it happens.
And don't forget, we've got the WrestleMania kickoff show, the Battle Royals for the women and the men, obviously the Cruiserweight Championship, so there's some interesting things that are going to come out of that as well.
Yeah.
We didn't get into those picks, but let us know what you guys think. What are your picks as well? Please let us know. Follow us on Facebook at Voice of Wrestling, of course, voiceofwrestling.net, prowrestling.net, or prowrestling.com, as well. Check them out. Nick, Mike Killam, all those guys doing a lot of stuff, covering all the news like only they can. So prowrestling.com, and of course, thanks to Fight TV. Check them out and download the app. And then definitely really appreciate as well Brad Gilmore coming on. Check out Reality of Wrestling, the Booker T podcast where he co-hosts as well. A lot of good stuff. So for Brad, of course, and Nick Paglino, I'm Chris Cash. This is the Voice of Wrestling. Enjoy WrestleMania, everybody. We'll see you next week.